You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into the Locked On Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra, Batiste, and alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. The Locked On Hawks Postcast is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So foul trouble made this game foul for the away team. We'll discuss why, and we'll download on a double-double that was still impressive despite a dud of a game. But first, let's talk takes on a 119-112 loss by the Hawks to the Magic that the Hawks really didn't need tonight. And Tate, you said the Hawks controlled what they could control in this game.
And here's the thing, Tenitra. As you can probably tell by some of our conversation in the pre-production meeting, if you will, I'm kind of on one tonight a little bit. I'm a little bit on edge. This is the first time I've actually smiled, by the way. But I am, only Tenitra can do that. But I'm a little bit on edge. Like I'm not one that just always, oh man, you always blaming stuff on the officials kind of guy. Like that's just not me. True. But when I feel like it is, I must really stand strong on that. You know what I mean? And willing to kind of like die on that hill. And I kind of felt like that was the case tonight. And I think that there's different ways of this because number one, I'm always going to be the person that feels like if you're deciding to hold the whistles in the first half, continue to hold the whistles in the second half. Agreed. If you're going to blow the whistle for every little thing in the first half, blow the whistles for every little thing in the second half. Well, what I wasn't sure I was going to expect tonight was that the whistles were going to, it was consistent, so I guess I can't be too upset about it, but they were just blowing on one end of the floor the entire night. At least that's how I felt. That's the kind of vibe and the energy, kind of like the feel that I got from that. And to be really transparent with you, I really believe that there are some instances where there are some teams that need the help from the officials if they want to win the game, which I don't feel like that was the Orlando Magic on tonight. I feel like they could have beat them without the help, which kind of, makes things a little bit worse, at least to me, in my opinion. But then there are some instances where they don't need. Some teams don't need that help, and some teams do need that help. And I don't think that the Orlando Magic really needed that. I think that the Atlanta Hawks was not necessarily on their A game anyway. I don't think that they played with enough urgency. I don't think they necessarily played horrible with the exception of turnovers and a couple other things. I just think that the whistles were just a little bit ridiculous. I get it. It's physical. It's a, one game separation from not only seeding, but also this being a division, game as well. And all those things. I'm just not sure that it should have taken all of that. I also will say this, and I'll close out. I don't think that the Hawks helped themselves by maybe not playing. I don't think they were sleepwalking, but I don't think that they helped themselves by not playing with the urgency that they needed. Although I do think that they controlled as much of the officiating part as they could.
Yeah. So agreed. We don't ever just go after the guys in the pinstripes. That's not what we typically do, but we'll call a spade, right? So if tonight, although also agree that it wasn't really all their fault. The Hawks were quite responsible for this loss themselves, but you do hate to see it, especially early in the game or early, like first half of the game, because sometimes, as we know, and we've seen this more so in years past, but we still see it a little bit this year. Sometimes that gets into the Hawks' heads as a younger team. And sometimes it's hard for them to kind of reset when they feel like officiating isn't going their way. So that's the thing that I don't necessarily like about it, because we know how that's hurt them in the past. Again, maybe not as much now, but it's still something that kind of gets into their psyche. So I do think that it probably could have been, I'll give it to you. It was a factor. It just wasn't the factor, because in my opinion, the factor and the fact of the matter is you knew, regardless of how this game was officiated, regardless of how this game was strategized, you knew you had to win.
You knew what you had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as I agree that the Hawks controlled what they could control. They can't control the officiating, but you can control a whole lot of other things. You had the opportunity to take one more step in the direction of controlling your own destiny. This was that game for you Hawks. Like, yes, we know that there are let's see, we're at 73 games left. We get that. And one of those games will be against the Magic. But really and truly, the Hawks, in my opinion, DeShaun, should have been in true playoff mode for at least the better part of the last 10 to 12 games. Like the last 15 game stretch should have been one where you were fighting for the 7th seed. Every night you should have gone out there looking like, I'm fighting for the 7th seed. Tonight, could have made a little headway on the team that happens to be in the 7th spot that you'd eclipsed and been ahead of for a while when they did their own swoon. So why let them back in? And that's why, for me, it's like, yeah, you can't control what you can't control in the officiating, but there were things that you could have controlled that you could have done a better job of executing on. Because let's face it, the Magic are a 31% three-point shooting team on the season. You allowed them to get the kind of looks that got them 41% from the perimeter tonight. So that's a Hawks issue. You could give it to Orlando and maybe say, hey, they had the hot hand from deep. Sure. Okay, but let's just be honest, 41% worth of the hot hand. So you're telling me that they somehow had a 10% differential in shooting from deep, and that was all them? I don't think so. So to me, that's a place where you had an opportunity and you allowed them to take advantage of it and kind of dictate what would happen. I think the other piece there is when you look at fouls, if you will, and they got fouled, 26 times? I mean, what are we doing here? And I think too, when you look at, or they only fouled 20 times. I'm sorry, you fouled them 26 times, correction. But yeah, when you look at that, or you look at the fact that when you're digging into the numbers and you're letting them beat you at your own game, 13 steals by the Magic?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the little things that, in my opinion, you could control, because Dyson Daniels is going to do what he does. We don't ever have to look down the stat sheet and kind of see, although it was an off night for him, he only had one steal, if you will. Onyeka Okongwu actually had 3. But if there is a night like that where Dyson Daniels isn't getting 2, 3, 4, 5 steals, then where's the help going to come from? And the other team should never be getting more than double the steals that you get, because that's kind of your bread and butter. That's one of the main ways that you stay in the game. That's one of the main ways that the Hawks oftentimes will limit the opportunity for a team to score in transition, or for a team to actually convert off of second chance points. They may get the offensive rebound, but the Hawks invariably will steal the ball and therefore steal the possession. I felt like those were the moments where the Hawks had opportunities to control their own destiny and control their own fate. And they did it, but it was too late. We're talking about I think it was maybe DeShaun at the 3-minute, 24-second mark in the fourth quarter, where I literally said, so let me get this straight. We couldn't do this at 3:24 in the third quarter.
Right. We're going to wait till the last. Right.
Yeah. So at that point, yes, you decreased the Magic's lead from 12 down to about 7. But again, by that point, you're under 2 minutes. And if we're being honest about ourselves, there was nothing that the Hawks had shown us in the game that said that somehow they could have had a miraculous comeback in the last 2 minutes after what I personally saw at the 3-minute and 24-second mark.
Well, I do think that, and not that I didn't realize it until you mentioned it, but I guess I really didn't see it. I didn't really put as much emphasis on it until you said it. Like, we are legit 3 games away from the end of the season. Yes. While I do think that they came ready to play, I don't think that they came ready to play as if there was 3 games left in the season.
That's
like
it.
There definitely should have been a hello, like, wake up. What do you guys think? You think we have we still playing next month? Like,
right.
This is we played 60 something games. Like, no,
Right.
we're down to like 79 games that have been played already so far. So I do get it from that standpoint. And especially with some of the senseless turnovers, we're talking about what, 18, I think, on tonight,
Yes.
this late into the season.
Yeah.
And obviously Trae Young and just whatever else. The Orlando's defense is okay.
Yeah, solid.
But it's not
But
Oklahoma City Thunder. If you're giving
no.
up 18 to the Thunder, then okay, I'm willing to accept that.
Right.
But not to the Orlando Magic, who's just been struggling, particularly on the defensive end of the ball lately and things like that. So I do get that. And they were, the Atlanta Hawks were definitely outmanned on the inside. For sure, with some of the size and things like that, but there's still no excuse for some of the things that we saw. Now, I'm totally in agreement with you on a lot of that stuff. The Hawks just didn't seem like they were understanding what point in time of the season that it is. I agree.
Indeed. And Robert makes great points as well, because he said, hey, let's break this down. Bad turnovers, we agree. Rebounding, no calls, missed free throws, lack of size. And he talked about missing those open threes as well, which the Hawks that's uncharacteristic of many of the Hawks. I won't say everybody, but that's uncharacteristic. So yeah, I think when you put all of those variables together, that's probably going to mean you take an L to the team that you were essentially chasing down walking into Orlando. That's how that goes. But foul trouble was actually what made this game a bit foul for DeShaun, and even for me. We'll talk about that turning point next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Robinhood Retirement. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive with Robinhood Gold. Your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3% plus. You also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So, DeShaun, something is foul among us, and that is the foul trouble that the Hawks found themselves in. But it wasn't just foul trouble, right? It was a moment in time where you really saw things unravel a little bit. And although the Hawks were able to kind of get themselves back on track, it was that stumbling at the beginning of the second quarter that really kind of caught your attention. Now, granted, Onyeka Okongwu finishes with 30 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But he did have 4 personal fouls. Mo Gay had 4 personal fouls. And then you got Risa Shea, Trae Young, and Risa Shea, Trae Young, Georges Niang, and Karis LeVert, all with 3 fouls. And that's the kind of thing where when you're in need of everybody playing, your best availability being your availability, that's a challenge, because in the first few minutes of the second quarter, when you get in foul trouble, it's really that thing that kind of haunts you, because of course it makes you play a little bit more tentatively, because you don't want to get, if you got the second foul, you don't want to get the third before halftime. If you got the third, you don't want to get the fourth. And of course, if you are approaching that fourth one, you don't want to get yourself into the position where, hey, I'm about to foul out. So yeah, I think you mentioned a great point. That foul trouble really did. It was a source of agitation and kind of a source for changing the game and how the Hawks approached it.
It was, and especially when you're talking about, key pieces. Like if we're having conversations about maybe Terrence Mann going out with his third foul with only a minute played into the second quarter, or, and respectfully, or Georges Niang, who we know is not the best lateral moving defensive player on the team, right? Then we're having different conversations because as we've gotten used to and accustomed to, obviously the bench comes in, certain guys pick up for the slack that other guys maybe in foul trouble or not having a great night per se. But this wasn't that. This was Trae Young, who we know also struggles lateral movement defensively too. That's no secret. I don't think I've ever seen him in foul trouble at any point that early into a game, and not just in his NBA career, but in all the years that I've been just watching him in general. But it wasn't just him. It's also Zachary Resache. It's also, Mohamed Gay. 3 starters, by the way. Shall I mention? I just thought that I don't know. I just thought that was a bit much. And listen, I know some people live on the side of which it's like, a foul is a foul, and I get that part too. But I also kind of get the part when some people say, yeah, but you can't call that at this point in the game. Some of that stuff I kind of get too. I think you have to be able to find a balance, but it just kind of felt like, and I know that we hear this sometimes a little bit too often, but sometimes it just kind of feels like, all right, like officials, we didn't pay our money to watch you blow the whistles all night, one-sided, right? Especially when that team really didn't need a lot of help. But, as unfortunate, as that was, obviously Trae didn't check out of the game after his 3 fouls, but that did take away Mohamed Gay, who checked out of the game for extended period of time. It did take out Zachary Resache, who checked out for an extended period of time. And then, because of those 2 players are guys that I would say fortunately or unfortunately, but let's just stick with unfortunately, are stuck with being our front court sometimes when we want to go small. Mohamed Gay has to play the 4 spot, or Zachary Resache in some instances probably has to play the 4 spot, for sure the 3. Like, I think that kind of puts you in a tough spot because you're already without Nance, Clint Capella, and putting everything on Onyeka Okongwu. So all of that being said, I just don't think that it helped them out a whole lot. The one thing I think that did help keep the Atlanta Hawks in the game for as long as it did before they went down by double digits because of that was Onyeka Okongwu. And I know we'll talk about this in the next segment. I just can't help myself, Tenitra, because I'm so excited.
Go ahead.
His perimeter shooting. I mean, yes. I mean, I
you gotta give love.
You just have to. You just have to. And that's something that kept them in it. The last thing I'll say about, some people might look at it and be like, oh, well, Mohamed Gay picked up 3 fouls. Big deal. What does he typically bring? I will mention this one thing, and you know how much I love Mo Gay. His underrated ability on defensive possessions, especially when it comes to protecting the rim. He may not be the biggest guy, the strongest guy, whatever, but he is a fearless defender that's not afraid to go up and put your shot up on the glass and at least contend for it. Sometimes he'll get dunked on, but you got to have a guy that's going to be able to have the encouragement to be able to go up there and at least try to contest for it or offer a shot.
See, that's what I like about Mo Gay as well. You kind of opened my eyes to him. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to see him down in College Park. But one of the things I like about him is the hustle. And so, you're not always going to see the numbers in Mo's favor. Tonight, 6 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks may not seem like a big deal to the average person just kind of looking at the box. But if you look at those numbers in the context of 18 minutes, that's powerful. If you look at those numbers in the context of, battling with Onyeka Okongwu when this team was clearly outsized and outmanned in that regard, that's when it becomes a big deal what Mo Gay is able to do. Want to ask you something too about what Robert put in the comment section. He says the 00 no call was horrible. How did they miss that? And they gave him a tech. But for you, DeShaun, I don't know about for you, but for me, but I'll ask you the question. How did you feel about Mo's, more importantly, I think, about Onyeka's response to the call, the no call, and then getting the technical?
I think it was fine. I think it was great. I mean, the thing that I like about is, and it's not just 00. It is 00, but it's not just 00. Some of the guys on this team is that when things like that happen and you have games like this and calls just aren't going your way, and you have to expect that calls aren't going to go your way when you're on the road and things are tight and everything else, is that he doesn't waver.
Yep.
He doesn't change the way he plays. He doesn't let that get into his head.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we see that from some guys like Trae Young. He tries to play get back ball sometimes, and we don't really see that as much out of Onyeka Okongwu. And I don't want to single out Trae because he's not the only guy, but I don't want to single out Onyeka because Onyeka's not the only guy that kind of keeps his head and continues to play the way that he plays and sticks to the script and things like that. So no, I mean, I'm good with it. Again, sometimes it can be even worse when things aren't going your way and then you're letting it get to you. Yep. Obviously, the other team's coming in and mucking it up a little bit and trying to play bully ball and things like that, trying to be overly physical. You saw what I sent you earlier with a couple of guys wanting to be physical and so forth. And obviously, here comes, I think they call him Minivan, which I think is the perfect name for Georges Niang considering his body type. But kind of mucking it up and pushing, shoving guys around. Probably don't even know what the hell was going on because he's like way over there and the action's happening like way over there. But he's like, I see some people finna get into it. It reminds me, I promise you, I won't be long. It reminds me of Poetic Justice. I don't know if you remember this movie with Tupac and Janet Jackson. They were at the barbecue and then some people started getting into it. Tupac, Homeboy in Chicago and some of them. And then whoever Unc was, got up, was like, I'm gonna have to get in this over here, not knowing what's going on. Like that was Georges Niang in that moment. It was like, I don't know what's going on, but it looked like some of my people got something to do with it. So I'm either about to go investigate. I mean, about to go and instigate the situation, or just try and push my weight around to let people know that you're not just gonna come out here and bully the guys that I'm going to war with every night.
To which I like it because we are always talking about the fact that we look around that locker room and we wonder who a dog is.
Who's the guy?
So if he wants to just buck on up, then buck on up because they need some folks kind of knucking and bucking on this Hawks team, if I do say so. But hey, look, as much as we don't like the defeat, we'll download on a double-double that was still very, very impressive and maybe inspiring despite the defeat. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. But traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. That's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a big difference. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, your well-being is worth it. So don't forget, after you check out Locked On Hawks Postcast, visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Well, DeShaun, we couldn't contain our excitement a little bit earlier. So at the end of the day, we know, you guys also know who our player of the game is. It's Double O. And we talked about his stat line, which was a tremendous stat line, 30 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals. And he did it, and this is a DeShaun Tate special, by the way. Perfect from the free throw line, perfect 8 of 8 from the free throw line, 9 of 17 from the field, and something that gave us a whole lot of joy, which was 4 of 7 from 3, because that shows you it wasn't just any old 30-14. And it also, in a game that may have been, for the most part, called around the 3.5-minute mark in the fourth quarter, it wasn't a 30 points like, oh, I just got to the last cheap 6, 7, or 8 points. O was still battling. Was still battling to the last minute, and so there's so much to dig into in that 30 points because it shows the growth and the maturity of his game at both ends of the court.
No question. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. And by the way, I can't believe I just gave a poetic justice reference, by the way. But
I was impressed.
you didn't know I had that in my bag.
Because I sure didn't, but okay.
But no, I think there's so many different things to talk about when you're talking about the things that are impressive for Double O on tonight. We could easily point at the 30 points, which I think everybody is, all fingers and signs are kind of going to point to that. But like you mentioned, when you're talking about the 100% from the free throw line, we're talking about a starting center, for crying out loud, going 100% from the free throw line. I think that's pretty
why I had
good.
to shout that.
Yeah, no question. And listen, I've been making this comparison. As long as he keeps playing like this and doing these things, I'm going to keep on talking about how great of a job that it appears that this coaching staff had done with the development of its players. At one point in time, Al Horford was nothing more than just a baseline jump shooter. He extended his game out to the three-point line. At one point in time, a guy who doesn't really have a plethora or an array of moves, that was a front court player for us at one point in time, John Collins, ended up stretching his game out to the three-point line. And now you're kind of seeing that out of Onyeka Okongwu, who I think had 4 threes on tonight.
Yeah. 4 of 7.
Made more than he missed on top of that. So I think that those are always good signs, and shooting better than 50% from the field as well. And we look at the, rebounds, we say, oh, okay, I get it. A center. Cool. 14 rebounds, but this is not the most athletically gifted, not athletically challenged, but not the most athletically gifted center either, if you know what I mean. Maybe not the fastest, center, maybe not the strongest center, maybe not all these things, but 14, and especially being able to show that he has balance. 7 on the offensive glass, 7 on the defensive glass. Indeed. By the way, being a center or a front court player in the NBA, in today's NBA, to be able to get the assist. I know sometimes it kind of sounds like it's easy because we have so many more in today's NBA than we used to, but it's still not an easy thing, especially when you're the only guy that the Atlanta Hawks really have to be able to dump the ball down to in the post. And for kicking that back out, sometimes those passes can be telegraphed. He had more assists than he had turnovers on tonight. Matter of fact, double the amount. So I think that there's so many different things, not just the 30 points, to talk about when we have conversations about Onyeka Okongwu, not only being the player of the game. And again, I'm not saying he's up for most improved and whatever else, what have you, but I think you'd be remiss and really hard to find someone who would disagree to say he's not one of the most improved players and or front court players in the Eastern Conference for sure.
Indeed. And you look at the way that position is evolving, right? And he probably leans more to power forward than he does to center.
For sure.
But most centers in the league lean more to power forward than they do to center. Correct. And their game is much
more. Very good point.
Yeah. So it's, for me, I understand that he may not be traditional, and the Hawks have more of a traditional big for all of these years, the last 5 years with Clint Capella as the starting center. But as the league evolved and as Onyeka Okongwu's skill set evolved, and no offense to Clint Capella, he was just older, so he kind of hit his ceiling as far as the evolution of his game. You just kind of needed everything that Onyeka could do that Clint wasn't quite doing. Now, he may not be as much of a monster inside as far as the rebounds go, but if you ask me, if I am more pleased seeing the offensive firepower that Clint Capella never gave the Hawks, absolutely. Because if that big is going to go out, and again, I'm just giving the example because he's on my mind, because, hey, the Nuggets have been at the top of everybody's news feed tonight because of Michael Malone's firing. So my mind went to Nikola Jokic, not because they have the same body type or skill set, but more because he's one of the examples of the evolution of that center. He's one of the examples of the evolution of the, really, like you said, the entirety of the front court, right?
Like a point center for the first time if I've ever seen one.
Yep. Right. So you're really kind of getting yourself, you're really kind of looking at a guy who sits in the 5, but has a few skills that the 1 or the 2 or the 3 has. That's what you need in order to continue evolving in this league. And then think about the pieces that you're going to put around him. He's going to be with a very strong four when Jalen Johnson returns. He's going to have Zachary Reese-Shea in that front court. So there are going to be pieces there that complement him and help him to offset maybe the size disadvantage that we're kind of seeing with the Hawks right now. And one more thing before we kind of move into kind of a quick look ahead. When I look at Onyeka Okongwu and look down that box score, I can't agree with you more than to have excitement about a big that is handling the ball and handling it, protecting the ball. Because that was the one thing with Clint Capella when he had the ball in his hand. It's like, somebody come rescue him. Because we don't want him outlet passing anything. We don't want him passing across from side to side. We don't want him in the lane trying to
nothing.
Stay away.
When you get it, look for somebody to pass it to if you're not looking at the rim. If like you ain't in position to score, look for the closest guy.
And the closest guy, not just a guy, the closest guy. And then little things that used to annoy us, which unfortunately, that was kind of a knock on Clint Capella's game. You and I rarely get on this postcast and have a meltdown or a diatribe about Onyeka Okongwu missing bunnies. Because, I wanted to go through the camera many nights. Like, come on, Clint. Come on, CC. Don't do that. Don't do that. So just the little fundamentals, just a little attention to detail, just the little things that are making Onyeka Okongwu more of a well-rounded, complete, a true two-way player. That's the excitement that you hear from us despite an absolutely agitating loss to the Magic. And why is that so agitating to us? Because DeShaun and I are looking at the schedule and we're seeing 3 games left. And we saw a great opportunity here for a team in the Hawks, a team in the Hawks that is sitting in 8th place at one point, was sitting in 7th place in the standings. And there was the Orlando Magic sitting right there in 7th place and them essentially having identical records. Would have been a great opportunity for them to make a move on Orlando that they couldn't. And now the Hawks find themselves with just 3 games left. And guess who one of those teams is that they have to play before it's all said and done? The stinking Orlando Magic to end the season. So, of course, they've got Brooklyn Thursday night. They've got the Sixers Friday night, both of which are on the road. And then, of course, they come home for Orlando Sunday afternoon. Probably not going to get anywhere but that 8th spot. But just real quick, DeShaun, what do you want to see out of this team in these last 3 games that show you that they're going to go into the postseason and want to go into the play-in on a positive note?
Let those games be a reflection that you took the way tonight went personal. That's what I want to see.
I like it.
That's probably the only thing that I really want to see. I don't want to. Those are 2 teams leading up to the Orlando game that are not going to be playoff teams, and I want to see you treat them as such and do what you're supposed to do and go back out there on a 2-game win streak and go out there and take care of Orlando and get a little bit of payback, the big payback, the James Brown payback. Yes. Period. That's what we want to talk about Sunday afternoon. They beat the Magic, point blank, period. And then we can start with everybody at 0-0 going into the play-in round, and we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Well, listen, we appreciate you guys as always for hanging out with us, the number one place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We will see you next time.